All right. This brings us to our installation best practices and quality control. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is where we're going to take the camera here, and we're probably going to make our way out through my office. And we've got a screen out there and everything set up, I think, for us to start talking about these things. I'm going to talk through a couple of them first, but then we're going to kind of riff off of one another. Adam and I are, and actually showcase some technique and things like that you need to be aware of when it comes to applying coatings and sealants. And I think that's it. So let's go ahead and take this, and we will make our way out there. All right. So we've got a wall over here. We've got two sides to this wall that we're going to be working with today. One side we're going to be looking at it like as a wall cavity, but we're also going to go to the other side here, because sometimes you're going to run into situations where you've got what's called lawn work to do. And we want to make sure that you've got everything that you need technique-wise to address those issues. So let's walk over here first, and let's just talk about some of these things, and I'll reprime this just so I can stay on track here. So the first thing that we've got to talk about, hopefully you're seeing this on the screen, is the importance of a clean surface. By the way, everybody, this is Adam. Adam is brand new to the company, 6 weeks with us.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah, that's great. So his background, why don't you tell everybody about your background?
Hey, so spent a lot of time in the coating side of the business. Been a part of painting business industry for a really long time, 20 years now. And so a lot of what we're covering and things that we're doing here, I've had a lot of experience with, but glad to be on the EnviroGuard team and working with Mark along with these guys.
So what you're going to notice is that because of his experience, he brings a lot to the table in terms of working with you to help prep for jobs, right? So you're going to notice at the end of this, we have a slide of like what our responsibilities are and how we can help you. He's going to be helping you, get set up for all those jobs that have coming up over the next 2-4 weeks, so that you have everything that you need, coming into that, you have the supplies that you need on hand. He's going to ask you questions. Maybe I would ask you so that the job goes smoothly, and it'll also help you with the estimating side, because he was used to estimate tools and all those sorts of things as well. And there may be time wanting like time and materials for your estimates also. So let's get back to the importance of a clean surface. Adam, why does the surface need to be clean?
Well, for one, it's got to have all of the dust, chemicals, anything, oils, anything that's on the surface needs to be removed so that you have a proper adhesion of your top coat, of your whatever you're putting on there. And if you don't have that, of course, it's not going to stick. It's going to bleed back through, which is going to cost you extra time having to come back, having to strip that down, to go back and do it the correct way. And so it's really important that you clean the surface, that you wash it, whatever that you need to use to make sure that it is clean. And
react,
whatever it is, you are, good, clean, dry is the fundamentals of any kind of coating application.
So, yep. And preventing callbacks is huge, right? I was talking to a contractor. We're going to talk about maintenance contracts and things like that later. I was talking to a contractor yesterday that estimated that he spends $750,000 a year in warranty work, right? Just the cost of sending people back in to redo things that should have been done right in the first place, right? And so getting these fundamentals right to start with, and this kind of training is essential.
That's right. That it's don't send guys out that don't have the experience. Put them through our training, put them through our little series of libraries to understand the importance of how to set up, how to break down, how to go through, but how to check things, how to measure for things. Because at the end of the day, it's all profit that you're either gaining or losing. And so it's very important as you are scaling your business, as you're training your guys. And you know, at the end of the day, we want a happy customer, and we want a happy project. So
It reminds me, like just yesterday, we had a contractor reach out to us who they're getting brand new crews started and they don't know how to do React Extract yet. So we scheduled 30 minutes with them like for tomorrow, right?
Yep.
And we're going to just take them hands on here through exactly how to do that. And so they're prepared for the field. So don't forget, we're a resource. We're not just trying to sell you stuff, right? The long term is, of course, we're going to, profit as you profit, but let us help you in the short term, get some of those fundamentals right so that your guys go out prepared.
Yeah, it's crucial to have the knowledge, but have the experience. It's hard to go out there and learn some of these things overnight. And so it's good to have some kind of library and education from knowledge from guys that are already experienced, that's been in the business for years and years. And so I've had the privilege and opportunity to do a lot of things, and the knowledge and experience that I want to bring to the table is hopefully that you see us as an asset. That you can use us as part of your team to help grow, to help train, and at the end of the day, make more money.
So the next slide is coating preparation. How important is it to stir, to mix up a coating before you use it?
Yeah, so I went through and I strained the product that we're getting ready to use, and I put a little Floetrol in it. We're going to be spraying it this morning. And so I just wanted to get it to the right velocity, and so that it's coming out of the sprayer at a good technique, and that I'm not overspraying or underspraying or missing or lapping or spitting, sputtering, all the things. And so it takes just a little time. It's something that most people skip in the field, and you can tell. But it took me about 10 minutes just to get everything prepped and everything ready to go. So it's really important on your equipment. At the end of the day, when you go to break down this equipment, you got to clean it. You've got to take care of those tips. You got to take care of your filters. You've got to take care of your machines, your hoses, your cords. All those things are really important to save money at the end of the day. And when you have the right guy on the right job, he's going to do those things for you so that he can keep, the supplies in good standing, good shape.
Yeah. The other thing is, when you break open let's say a 5-gallon pail of MaxGuard, sometimes you're going to see some separation in there. If you start to spray right away, there'll be a lack of uniformity. But more important than that, you don't want to cavitate a pump. When you're priming that pump, you got to break the surface tension first of that product. So if you use a paddle mixer and a drill to break that surface tension, even if it looks uniform, just for 15 seconds, it's going to flow so much better through your pump.
Absolutely. And so one thing that you're going to find that when you open any kind of gallon or 5 gallons of any kind of coating, if it's been setting for a little while, it's going to have, like you said, have a little separation. There might be some dried up edges around it. So it's good to just go through and stir it up really good, whether that's by hand or by paddle bit and drill. And then, I like to personally filter everything that I'm going to put through a gun just to make sure that I don't have any kind of trash or anything that's been floating through the air. So as soon as you up that gallon or that 5 gallon, there's particles in the air, there's dust, you might lift up the lid and it fall in it. And so it's just good to have that strainer right by, filter it out, get all that stuff out so that you know that you're going to be putting on a really nice coat at the end of the day.
Yeah. Let's switch sides. I'll control the thing here and keep rolling to our next topic. All right. So that brings up the airless sprayer. What's the importance of an airless sprayer? And maybe, we see a lot of sprayers like in big boxes and things like that, right? They're kind of dressed up to look like a commercial unit. What's the downside of using these, homeowner units really on the commercial side of things?
So you're going to find that there is, you can start at $200 and you can go to $10,000, $15,000 on a unit. And it really is what the components are made of. When you're at the box store and you're looking at a $300, $500 sprayer, maybe it's got wheels on it, maybe it doesn't. It looks pretty. It's in a really nice box, but that machine's only built to use 3 to 5 times a year. And so one of the biggest things about that is just the components inside of it is just made different. and they're not made to run several gallons of product through. And so what happens is it just breaks down. It doesn't take on as many jobs. And so you're going to get, if you want to run 5, 10, 15 jobs out of that, that's probably what you're going to get out of the year. But when you start stepping up to a professional grade system, you're going to find that you have so many different controls for it. The parts and the mechanisms, the way it acts, the way it thinks and functions is completely different. And as someone that has invested well into equipment through the years, it is only standard that you step up into something to where you can run 400 or 500 gallons a year. I mean, these machines, they joke about it, but they've got a reporting system on them. They'll tell you exactly how many gallons you're putting out a minute, how many gallons you've put out for the day. I mean, if you're analytics at all, you can pull a report right on your new sprayers. And so check those things out. They make them in power. They make them in gas. They make them, large and simple and usually easy. Some are a little heavier, some are a little lighter. It depends on what you're looking to do, whether or not you're in an attic space or in a basement outside of a building or a commercial space. These are all different types of machines, and the biggest thing is making sure that you understand what the machine does and does it match up with what you're spraying or you're putting the application on.
Yeah, I've always been told that for like the handheld units like we're going to use today,
Yep.
that those are good for like 25 to 50 hours a year.
That's right.
And that the other units that you might see that look like commercial units in the
Yep.
big boxes,
Yep.
those are probably 50 to 100 hours per year.
Yep.
Not much more than that.
Not much more than that.
Yeah.
If you'll take good care of them, you may get a little bit more out of that, but they're really for that home, do it yourself. Maybe your handyman that doesn't do very much throughout the year. They're great. They're great machines for things like that. But if you're putting on several hundred gallons of stuff like this, you're going to need to step up into a little nicer machine, something that's going to last you more than a year or 2 years. Matter of fact, I run into a guy the other day that bought one of my sprayers probably 7 years ago. I think I give $3,000 for that thing, brand new, and I sold it, and he bought it off another guy, and he is still using that thing to today. It still looks and acts brand new. So
You're just repacking that once a year and then just doing some basic maintenance on it.
cleaning the hoses, making sure if you're in a very cold climate, that when it becomes wintertime, that you flush that thing out completely, put some pump guard in there to help keep it from freezing up and busting the pump. And those are all things that I've had to learn the hard way. So
yeah. Let's talk about tip selection, coverage control, things like that.
Yeah.
Maybe not everyone's familiar with the scale and the rating system of how you select a tip and what it means in the first place.
So both Graco and Titan's got different types of tips, and they have a lot of times whenever you're looking at them, you can look at the guide, and they sometimes are a little hard to understand, but basically on a nutshell, it is how much you're putting out with the fan and how wide the fan is going. So, if you go back to my painting days, I'm going to drop down to a smaller fan with not as much paint if I'm going to be doing like trim. But if I was to be going out here and doing a concrete block, I'm going to have a little wider fan. I want that thing out there as far as I can get it, and then a tip that is going to allow me to max out my machine. So that, and 9 times out of 10, it's all based upon how thick it is too. So, once you get out into those porous sections, you're going to find that the paint's just a little thicker. And so that tip is going to allow you to push your machine to the max.
Right.
There's different sizes, and you can go through them, and there's probably, there's, from anywhere from, I think it's a 311 on the Graco side to, you can get 313, 315, a 511,
yeah,
515.
You can get 332s or things like that, right?
Depending on whether or not you're whether it's a kind of more of a water-based stain or a thinner product, you're going to have a lower rating tip. So,
lower output, right? So that's the two things that your tip size is telling you, right?
That's right.
That first number or two, right? So that like a 3 simply means a 6-inch wide fan pattern, about 8 to 12 inches from the surface.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
If you had a 611,
Yep.
that would give you 12 inches of fan width, right?
That's right.
On the other side of that, that number that is like your 11, your 19. 19 is a really popular tip for us, right? 21's a popular tip for us.
Yep.
That's your orifice size. That's 19 100ths of an inch, 21 100ths of an inch. If we're using a thinner product, 11 100ths of an inch, 13 100ths of an inch is where you want to be, right? And all those things are like on labels and technical data sheets and things like that to help you along.
For sure.
Yep.
If you're like me, you've probably got 25 of those in a box or a toolbox somewhere where
$1,800 a tip, right?
Yeah, they're $30 and $40 a tip.
Yep.
Some of these for the newer guns are even more expensive than that. So it's very important that you're taking care of whether or not you're using an acrylic or an oil base. Make sure that you're using the correct cleanup.
Yeah. So that's why when you're prepping for these jobs, right? You're 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks out from these jobs. Now you've got a resource here in EnviroGuard who's been in your shoes, right? He can not only help you prep on the remediation side of things, but when it comes to everything coatings and sealants oriented, he can make sure that you have the right equipment, that you got the right tips. And remember, we're a dealer for Titan, so we've got all of those things at our fingertips here that we can literally make sure that on the same pallet or in the same order, we're delivering it all. And if we need to schedule a little bit of training with you, we can do it just like this.
Absolutely. It's not something that's rocket science or brain surgery. It is just, it's the time that you take to learn the skill, the trade. And the more you do it, the better you're going to get. So the more you do it, the more you purchase, the better the knowledge you're going to have to do it correctly.
All right, so let's start talking about a little technique here, right?
Yes.
Got distance, right? That's really the first thing that people need to really understand is how far should they be holding that tip from the surface?
It doesn't matter whether or not you're using an air sprayer or a can of spray paint. If you're not 12 inches or back, all you're going to do is completely thicken up your surface. You're going to put on too much. You're going to have runs. You're going to have buildup. You're going to have sags, drips, and drags, and all the things that just look horrible. And so it's very important that you learn a good technique. It's always good before you start. I pulled out a piece of cardboard this morning and I just went ahead and got everything dialed in. So
should we walk over there and start talking about it?
You can see that once I got it took me a little bit to dial it in because it is the gun, the settings, how high you want to turn it, how much you're looking to put out, but you can see how the lines are. It spit and sputtered, here and there. And that's just part of prepping with a sprayer is that you're gonna have to dial it in and you're gonna have to learn to keep it away. But you can see like I had a little spit there, a little sputter. So I just worked the product and continued to get it stirred up and sprayed until I had it dialed in to where we need to be. Now, this was not a very good example of how you're going to want to put it on. This was just to dial it in.
Got it. Okay. So what's our next step here? We've talked about distance and things. Maybe I can unplug this and just carry this with us.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So we've gone from distance to now we're talking about uniformity, right? That the path that people are taking on a surface, right? And I see this where all the time people are using this arcing. What's the problem with this arcing motion?
So it's one of the biggest things about any kind of coatings or putting it on, whether it's brush roller or sprayer, is understanding the uniformity of it and how to apply it, whether that be brush, whether that be sprayer or roller. Your paint only goes so far. Your coating only goes so far. And it's always good to have best practices in line, whether that's a 50% overlap, which you'll see here in a little bit. It's very common to see a lot of guys do this or let go of the gun when they spray it, and they got this and that. And at the end of the day, you'll know a very good coating versus someone that doesn't have a lot of experience. And so even when we're talking about React Extract as well, when we're putting on that chemical, it's huge to keep your wet gauge, your
Wet film thickness.
wet film thickness gauge in hand, so that you know exactly the millage that you're putting it on. It is huge,
Right.
because this thing right here will save you money, it will save you time, and it will help your guys in the field understand exactly what they are needing to do and how thick to put that on.
It stays on spec, not too much, not too little.
That's right. So if you put on too little, you're going to be back doing it again. If you put it on too much, you're probably going to be back doing it again, and you
And
wasted
losing money.
and you wasted money. So
Yeah.
it's
So maybe we can show an example here of how to properly spray and maybe how to improperly spray.
Yeah.
Right, because they need to see what the result is. Maybe should we do it on the flip side? Yeah.
that side might be a little hard to see, but you can see that way back here. That's kind of a look there, but you don't want a whole lot of this. You've got to keep your elbow. You've got to keep your elbow and your wrist locked. So if I'm going to do this, I'm going to start in the corner right here. That's got a little spit and sputter, and it's because I've let it dry up in the tip just a little bit, but I'll go right back over that. Now, one big thing about this line is I'm probably not completely flat with it. So when I hold it with an angle, you're going to get that line there, which then in return gives you the gap right there. So once I get up into here, what you don't want is this.
So yeah, because I noticed as you were coming over this way,
Yep.
right, you're really kind of tailing off with that, right?
That's right. You want to fade out because you're going to have to go back into it.
Mm-hmm.
And what you don't want is a big lap right here
Mm-hmm.
of extra product.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of guys don't know what that means. The reason it's looking like this a little bit is because the white on the black.
Sure.
Blending through a second coat would.
And these aren't
Feel it
perfect,
bit,
right?
yeah.
These aren't like we would normally be working with on a job with a real airless spray rig.
But you can tell that the coverage is good, as far as what I'm putting it on. Now, what a lot of guys will do, and I'll go right here, and you'll see this. Or they'll do this.
Yeah.
And when they get to the corner, they're just bearing down on it. And because of that, you're going to have a really thick spot. The uniformity, even if my patterns aren't great, it is very much the same all the way up.
Yeah. So trigger release, right? Learning how to trigger properly is an important part of the
That is
releasing
correct.
that trigger at the end of the stroke.
Some guys have got different techniques I've seen through the years, and some guys do it a little different. If I'm going to go off over do it because I'm off the edge.
Yeah.
But it's okay. It's a great habit for me and practice. And then when I get back over here, of course, I'm going to fade into it. But I'm still not that heavy coming back into it.
Right.
But if you get too close, let's say the 6 inches and not 12 inches, you can see how gummed up and thick it is. And if I finish that out normally, you'll see a big difference. There's another, if you don't stop, you see where your buildups are.
Yeah.
Now, if this is all trash, right? None of this is good versus this. You can see noticeably the difference in uniformity.
Yeah.
Once.
Now, and with this here, if we were using a professional tip, we wouldn't see that, right? There wouldn't be that shadow coming through there, right? Everything would look very, very uniform like we're seeing here.
Yeah, and there again, that's the amount of tip that I've got right now.
Yeah.
I need a little bit bigger size.
Yep.
But if I was to go back over, and you'll find at times I'll go back and I'll be kind of done in, but I'm far away from it so that it just kind of helps blend everything in. But you can see with a second coat, not even dried yet, that I got rid of 9 times, the gray.
Now, one thing that I've often heard coming back from customers is they'll apply our product spec. Like our spec on these products is 10 wet mills.
That's right.
Right?
Yep.
And most of our competitors is 20 wet mills.
Yeah, double.
Yeah, double. But one thing that they'll have come up on them is that maybe it's not pure white. Maybe you just see a little something through that. It might be on spec for us, the factory.
Yep.
But then your customer might ask you, "Hey, I expected this to be pure white."
Yep.
So one thing that you need to consider, and kind of going back to the wet film thickness gauge, and maybe a tool that you could prepare for yourself is, you know how you have Luan at, from like a
Yep.
big box or something like that?
Yep.
My suggestion would be put a piece of tape right down the center of it.
Yeah.
Do one side with your 10 wet mil.
Yep.
Do one side with your 20 wet mil. See what they prefer to look at, right? Because you could end up quoting them on 10 wet mils, factory spec.
Yep.
Then they complain. You go back and you reapply it again so it looks good, but now you've lost all that money.
Yeah, you're double
Right.
the product.
Right.
And so you could probably test that with your millage.
Right.
Let's see, and just see
Let's
what
try a
wet thickness is.
yeah, let's try here.
It's pretty dry.
Yeah.
Dry.
Yep. But I'm seeing it right at 9 wet mills.
That's pretty good.
Right. We're
Hey.
right there. You see that? At 9 wet mills on the surface. And see how simple that is? We're just tapping it to the surface, releasing, and then we see the wet mill is right on that tooth. Right? That's the distance it is from the substrate.
If you'll go back over to here,
Yep.
and you'll take some of these areas.
Yeah.
So it really looks good, right? Oh, we going on. But now look at your gauge.
Well, we certainly went over 12.
But now in a
We went up to 20 wet mills. We're right on spec with our competition.
Yeah,
right.
so
But that's double the cost.
double the cost, double the product. When you're looking at a big airless sprayer, I'm going to be able to dial that in to 10 wet mills.
Yeah.
I can set it here on my cardboard 10 minutes before we get started on this project. I'll dial that in with my tip size, with the amount of pressure that I'm shooting to the gun, and then I'll take that piece of cardboard and I'll just start putting it on there, because I can control the pressure. So if my pressure's up all the way here, or I could probably get 10 mils out of the first spray, or slow down. But I could slow down and get it there. But with that big sprayer, you're going to be able to just spray it right out at 10 mils. That's the great thing about those tip sizes and having a professional rig.
Yeah. Now, we've kind of handled a couple topics here that we're going to get to. One was, holding the gun 90 degrees at all times, right?
Yep.
Not angling down, not angling up,
That's great.
spraying straight on. Let's see. We talked a little bit about triggering, right? Every trigger feels a little different.
It does.
You got to kind of get used to it.
Yeah, every gun. And as you get into your big rigs, you're going to find that they've got upgraded guns these days, and those are amazing. The trigger is very, very consistent but precise.
Yeah.
And the way you pull that, you go back to the old time, some of the old car guys that sprayed their vehicles and with the cup sprayers, and
Mhm.
they've stole a lot of that, that information and technology to now place here to where we're seeing a better coverage with one coat,
With an airless system.
an airless system.
Yeah.
That's correct. With one coat. See, that's there's a lot of times where if you're spraying it on thick enough and your drying time can match, because that's huge too. You don't want to go spraying it all over and it has, a 6 hour drag time, drying time, then that's going to just drag and sag. Right. That's going to take 2 coats.
Yep. All right. So flat panels, we kind of talked about it a little bit here, but the idea behind that is that you do need to have overlap between where you stop and where you start again.
That's correct. Yep. And to fan it out.
Yep.
There again, don't hold down when you stop. Fan that on out so that when you come back in, you are fanning back into it, but making sure that you are keeping that arm very consistent. You can do that, but you got to let out of it.
Little
Right?
tailing off.
Little
Yeah.
tailing off. A lot of guys do it, and a lot of guys don't. I've always been a guy that tailed off a little
Okay.
bit,
Okay.
just because it helps me control maybe even a little bit of overspray.
Okay. So how about end strokes, right? Where you've got the end of a board right here or
Yep.
something like that.
Uh-huh.
How do you treat that?
So I want to, once I get to the end of it, it depends. Can I get this over here?
Yeah.
So basically, once I like to start over here.
Uh-huh.
I always have moved left to right and then right to
Me
left.
too. Me too.
That's just common practice for me. And once I get to there, I'm going to come back, and I'm just going to. Once I get to the edge, I just want to lightly let off the trigger so that I'm not piling it up on the corner. Because even if you did here, you're going to get a corner run.
Uh-huh.
You're going to be too thick here. It's going to start sagging. It's going to run, and that's a lot of issues and a lot of.
What do you think about a vertical end stroke?
Yeah, so I'm not opposed to doing anything like that. I think horizontal versus vertical is preference for the most part.
Uh-huh.
But if I'm a little thin, I love to turn that gun back over,
Uh-huh.
and I'll just start from the top. And I'll try to get the edge of my fan back down the edge of that
Right.
with not so much overspray. But you can see
Yeah, it's very, very consistent right there, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Then let's talk about we talked about long work. Let's talk about corners.
Okay.
Right. A lot of people I notice will just go right into the corner itself.
Yeah.
What's the problem with that?
Yeah. So once you unload, all right. So the first rule I ever learned in coatings, 20 years ago, went to work for a baseball coach at a high school. First thing he ever taught me, hold the brush.
Yeah.
Do not unload in the corner.
Yeah.
Start out from the corner and work yourself way into the corner.
Yeah.
And it's, a lot of times when you're coming back in, so you want to flip over here so we can see a corner?
Sure.
For example.
Yeah.
Let's see. So if I'm spraying this technique out, what I don't want to do is ever stop in the corner because it's going to get a high buildup. And not only that, you're ending in the corner, you're starting in the corner. You're ending in the corner, you're starting in the corner. So your thickness is always going to be more. So it's best to start away from it. Once you flip, you're finished with it. Turn that tip back up. Hit your ankle to fill that back in right there.
Yep. Yep.
So that's been my best technique. Is I don't want to start on the corner. I don't want to end on the corner. I want to start in the middle. Or on this case, I would probably spray off vertical like that.
Right.
Just because because of the boards being here, the horizontal.
Yep.
Will make this get a lot of stuff.
Yep.
You're going to have a lot on that by the time you get done.
Yep. All right. So then what about returning this idea of continuous motion, right?
Yeah.
Is it best practices that when you come to the end of the stroke to leave off of the trigger?
Yeah.
Or should you just continue back into a new path?
There again, coming back to what I said earlier, it depends on whether or not I like to personally stop. It's good practice for me, but I think you've got to let off the trigger there. You don't necessarily, unless it's overspray.
Yeah.
I would keep down the overspray. That's probably one reason that I use that technique is because I don't want it blowing over there.
Yeah.
And so I'll let off of it at the corner and I'll go back and fix my corner once I've sprayed it, get that uniform look.
Yeah, I've found that if you don't release, just get in the habit of releasing that trigger every single time, you don't get as good at triggering the handle to begin with, right?
Yep.
And it just seems like you overuse product. You never have as good a finish.
That's right. You're going to have a lot of buildup.
Yeah.
Right here on your ends. Because you're probably applying a lot more here than you think you are when you start. That gun's coming out. Once you start, that gun's it's ready to go, and so it's got a little pressure build up behind it.
Yeah.
And so it's going to come out with a little bit more than what you would get into. And so, therefore, it's just good to end it and let it go.
Let it go. Right. All right. So I know we've already talked about the wet film thickness gauge.
Yep.
How important is this for guys who are getting, especially controlling costs?
For sure. So one thing that is always been crucial for me is estimating. I want to be on point. I think it's good to be within 15% or at least 10% of what you estimated. But if you've got guys in the field that have no knowledge or experience or technical experience or knowledge with this kind of product or with the millage reader, you're going to find that you could be estimating a commercial building or a commercial product using this stuff. Let's say you estimated 50 gallons. Well, they're putting it on, not thick enough. Then you're going to have to go back and do another coat.
Yep.
If it's not the correct, and that's another 50 gallons. Let's say probably 0.75 of that. So you're going to use at least another 30 gallons.
Yeah.
It's probably not quite 50 gallons, but that's another 30 gallons.
6 more pails.
6 more pails at $500. I mean, at 5 gallons, that's roughly $300 on average for a 5-gallon pail.
Yeah.
So you do the math real quick. That's a lot of
$1,800 wasted, huh?
You are not within 10% of your
Right.
I mean, you are fall off. You're off. Not only that, you're using more on your equipment that day than you need to.
Yeah.
So not only. Another thing is the labor side of it. Forget the material, but the labor side of it is even more costly than your material. And so you're paying a guy to go back.
2 coats, really, right?
That's right. And it's if you take his first coat as 1, your second coat's usually 0.75 of your normal coat. And so you've still got 3/4 of an hour there that it's taking somebody to go back and do it again.
Right.
Which is twice as much. So it's very, very important in the field for your guys to understand how to put it on, how thick to put it on, how thin to put it on.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you want a little thinner coat. It needs a little drying time. Maybe it's porous and you don't want to thick it. You don't want to just go in there and blast it. You may need to have a little thinner coat and then go back to get to your 10 mils.
Right.
That's all estimation. That's all understanding what you're looking at when it comes to the surface, what that surface needs. Cleaning is huge, because if you don't clean it correctly, it's going to probably use more paint. Twice, I wouldn't say twice as much, but probably 50% more by not taking care of the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the day, you've just got twice as much invested than you should. If you've got those guys trained and they understand thickness, good practices, then you're going to have a very good estimate. And then when you go back to do your cost versus estimate, which is huge in my business, something that I always wanted to be was a better estimator.
Mm-hmm.
I want to get within that 10%. If it's calling for 10 gallons, I want to use 10 gallons. I want to use, if it's 9.5 or 10.5 and 11, I want to be within that number.
Yeah.
Because that's what I've estimated. And I know that what we have done and through all the testing and everything, I know that your square footages are on point. There is a range there because of porous section of different kinds of surfaces.
What do you think about these? This is just off topic for a second before we get back to cure time. A lot of times we see these labels out there that'll say 400 feet per gallon. 400 feet per gallon is like 4 wet mills on the surface. What do you think about that?
So it depends on the product and what you're putting it on.
Yeah.
It could be concrete block. That's going to be porous. It's going to take more.
Yeah.
I go back to some of my history in the painting, but decks are huge.
Mhm.
Or log cabins, anything that's porous that's going to be like a sponge and just soak it up. You're better off understanding that it might be 100 square feet per gallon, and then moving up from there. What does the surface look like? What's the preparation of the surface? What's the when we're looking at this plywood, you could tell right away when I was spraying that it was absorbent.
Right.
I mean, it was penetrating right in the open pores of the wood was just soaking it up. And so it's
And ultimately, you're trying to accomplish two things, right? You're penetrating that wood
that's right.
because you've got saturation there, so it bonds to the surface.
That's correct.
But you've also got to have that top coat that's actually a protection.
That's correct. So,
Yeah.
There's a lot of times that, it's hard to get away with those one coat and dones these days.
Yeah.
Because they've never created things to be one and done.
Mhm.
There is ways and applications in different products that you can get away with that one and done, but you're going to find that
But we've talked about that it's not without the downsides.
there is going to always be
Ability, longevity,
That's correct.
all of those sorts of things.
Well-
One and done is good for selling paint, but it's not good for the end customer.
No, I agree. And so I've always explained it like this in my sales pitch and my history of doing estimation and sales is that first coat is almost, even though that we're not primering this, but that first coat's going down as a primer. It's giving me my base layer. There again, it's giving me that it's allowing the product to do what it needs to do in order to block out things. Once you get that
Adhere.
Yeah. Once you get to your second coat, it's more of your aesthetics coat, right?
Yeah.
It's to help the uniformity. It's to help the look of it. But at the end of the day, it's longevity.
Yeah.
It's how long it's going to last.
Yeah. That's
And,
that top coat is what is our moisture control in the first place,
That's
where
correct.
condensation can build up without passing through to increase moisture content below.
That's correct. And so when you go back over there and look at the other side, you can see the thin and the thick. If you let the thin, which is what's correct, you're going to be back doing that again.
Right.
We'll go ahead and explain to the benefits of going ahead and third more.
Yeah.
To go ahead and do that. Your callbacks are very minimum. Also sell and tell them that you want to paint it as well.
Yeah.
So once you get it in there, you don't have to come back as near as often, but when you do, it's going to be a lot easier on you and your guys and your equipment to just do a maintenance coat on it years down the road.
Yeah. So that really comes down to customer education. We've got to be great educators. Customer, right? You could get all the technical things done, right? And knowing it is not nearly as important as being a customer.
And I think that's where where my success is coming in the estimating and sales is understanding the application forms, understanding how we do it, why the guys do it this way, so that I can explain it to the customer at the end of the day, and they understand why maybe I'm a little more expensive than the other guy. Why my bid, and you guys know just as well. I've heard it from you guys, just like I heard it from paint companies. Is I've bid this one at 30,000. Will somebody come in at 15,000?
Right.
Well, there's a reason he come in at 15,000, and he's not sold he's not told the customer exactly what needs to happen. He's estimating something correctly, and they have it. Once you go in and you tell that customer, that client, exactly how the process works from top to bottom. Hey, we're going to cover this up. We're going to take this out. We're going to do this, and that. You are only doing benefiting yourself and to what I call loading that shotgun to where you get to the end of the sale and you're ready to ask for the business. Now they understand why your price is the way it is.
Why you're better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to always be the cheapest. I don't want to never be the cheapest, but I don't never want to be the most expensive. I like to find myself in the middle of free, but there's a lot of times I am more expensive than everybody else, and that they'll do business with me because they understand what I'm going to have to do. I build my time, and I explain my time in the project that if it's going to take me 120 hours, we're going to be there within 10 or 15% of that number for the most part.
Yeah. Now, cure time. Let's say we do everything right. The prep is done right. We've coated the surface properly. What about cure time?
So it's very valuable. Whether it's we're talking about outside, you got to know some weather. You don't want it to rain right afterwards. Hot, humidity, cold. These are all factors in your drying times, and allowing those things to set up and do the work that they have done. You're going to find that most applications or most products these days are within an hour touch of being dry, but that does not mean that they are
depending on humidity.
Exactly.
Right.
Most acrylics take about 14 days for it to really cure, fully cured.
Yeah.
And so that's huge when it comes to moving things or touching it or scraping up against it, because you've got to make sure that your drying times in between coats are correct. I've seen so many guys through the years spray a coat, come back and spray another coat, and they call that done. And that is far from being anywhere correct to a standard that we try to live up to do it correctly.
Yeah. So we got cure time down. Let's talk about, we've talked about this a lot, maintenance contracts.
Yeah.
Right? There's a reason why condition one is so valuable, right? It begins to be valuable for establishing what a healthy environment is, but we want to keep that environment that way.
That's correct.
Right? So, we're moving, toward this with a number of our customers on the certified side of things to using this terminology, of condition one maintenance.
Yeah, that's correct. So it's to have some kind of maintenance plan for them, whether you're charging them a package deal or you're just in a follow-up program with them, to where you can go back in and check this every quarter, every 6 months, once a year. It's good to go back in, check your work, make sure that you're maintaining what your work does. But at the end of the day, your customer's going to love that. They're going to know that you care. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that makes you so much different than the competition, is when you can show that you really do care about their business, their house, whatever it may be. And so it's really huge to make sure that you're maintaining what you did. Does it last 2 years? Does it last 4 years? Is there an issue? They call you, and is there an issue? Don't run away from the issue.
Yeah.
Go fix it.
Yeah.
Is it your fault or is it somebody else's fault?
Fix it before it becomes a big issue.
That's exactly right. That's where you're going to find that you're going to call me or Mark on the technical side or on the application side is, did you do it correctly? Did your guys do it correctly? Well, they may say that you did it correctly. Let us come in and examine whether or not they did it correctly. And we'll help you as much as we can, when it comes to knowing our products and how it's supposed to be done.
So we started a lot of this by talking about the 5 different moisture types. And this brings us right back around to that, because now when we're doing an annual inspection for moisture content, and all these areas of condensation, bulk water intrusion, etc., we're looking for the same stuff again, right? But we're looking for that. And we also have a fee associated with an inspection, right?
That's right. So I've always charged a little bit of money, some kind of something, to just go out, and maybe that's once a year. Maybe
that's what we see.
And so, if I'm going to come out and I'm going to spend a few hours walking around, then I'll charge them a small fee. I always provided a warranty, and I'm sure most of you guys do too. Make sure that you're going back and taking care of your warranty work.
Yeah.
If there is an issue within the warranty, let's figure out why. But the second chance money, everybody knows that second money is easier to make than that first money. And when you go back to do your maintenance plan, you're only given a chance for a sales guy or an estimator or someone that's going out to look at it to find more work. We're all cursed at the end of the day when we walk into places. You're going to see mold, mildew. You're going to see bad paint jobs. That's the first thing that we notice in this profession. It doesn't matter if it's a restaurant, if it's a school or a courthouse or somebody's their house. That's the first thing you notice. I was at my mom's over the weekend. She's got effervescence in her basement. Her humidity's high. We're starting to see mold and mildew come through, and I've not ever paid that much attention to it, but I have. But I'm like, holy cow, mom, we got to fix this. You know, that's huge. But it allows you to give another opportunity to check out the scope and be the professional, right? You be the educator and be like, okay, I think everything looks good here from what I'm seeing, but I have noticed some things that changed over here, and this was outside of what we originally done. I think you need to take care of this, right? Or let's go ahead and talk about what the next steps are moving forward to take care of that position.
Yeah, and that now our we're not looking at a customer as one and done either, right?
Exactly.
We're looking at the customer a life cycle
That's
with
great.
a customer where we're establishing value, right?
Correct.
If we understand condition one, and our goal is always to keep our customer at condition one, there's probably about three things that we're trying to do for them. The first thing, if you're looking on at this slide right now that says value, is it's all about preserving the property's value, right? It's the most valuable asset that most people have is their home. So we want to make sure that preserving that value is taken into consideration. We also want to, if they're going to sell it, we want to eliminate not what are called non-disclosure liabilities. That is covering things up and doing things the opposite of what you would do. That is being unprofessional about it, using bleach and things like that. Painting over mold. We want to prevent those things. So keeping them in compliance with a condition one environment is super important in regard to eliminating non-disclosure liabilities. And finally, when it comes time to sell, by maintaining a property properly, we are preventing negotiations, right? If you see a problem, that problem is going to be magnified, especially by a buyer's agent, right?
That's right.
Don't allow your customer to get leveraged by a buyer and a buyer's agent who's going to double or triple that price tag in terms of what they ask for as a price reduction on that property. If we stay focused on condition one and those three benefits, now we've got a real story to tell.
I totally agree with that 100%. It's all about bringing value to the table, especially like you said in a recent market like we've seen in the last 5 years. I mean, it's you wouldn't imagine how many people I have went behind and fixed where they just killed or zensered over top of mildew or odor, or I see it a lot around the mountains, but like the wood stoves, the black soot that's up and around the ceilings, and people just go right back in and just try to prime over it, and that might work for 10 or 15 days, but it's going to be back through.
Yeah.
You're still going to smell it. That's not capturing everything that you should. And anybody that's got any kind of knowledge with the business, especially these realtors hired to come in and do an inspection report, their job is to find everything wrong, right? And so once you've worked with one or two of those guys, you'll find that you want to try to head off everything you can before they come in and see it.
Annual inspection is even more important.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Let's also discuss this. A lot of our contractors aren't used to that regular service work, right? They're thinking about, a mold remediation, water, dry out or something like that, moving on down the road. But the problem is that they're also not thinking about the resale of their business long term and the value that they're building by establishing these contracts and having something that's actually sellable.
Yep, that's right.
Right.
I mean, it's anything that you ever put any money in, you can. It doesn't matter whether it's a vehicle, whether it's a house, whether it's a sprayer, a watch, a computer. What you spend is what you're going to get out of it. And so there's different avenues and there's different customers, and not all customers are our customers or your customers. And that maybe they just quick Band-Aid and fix it and move on. That's not always the best application and best process for us and for you, because number one, you're really just hurting your name. If somebody walks in there or buys that house and says, or that business and says, that doesn't look real good, who done that?
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter whether or not you are paid to make it look like that or not. If that's what the customer looks like, that's your reputation. My work is my work.
Mm-hmm.
It is my picture. When you see my work, you're going to know my work from everybody else's.
Right. Why don't we go ahead and take this inside? And there's we got a lot of trucks passing by, but we want to talk about establishing these maintenance services. So let's just go on back into the office and talk about this, and we'll finish it on up. Okay, so hey, honey.
Yeah, I will.
You're fine.
Okay, so maybe we can bring this on up to date on establishing maintenance services. It's on my laptop here, and I'm sure that Gigi is probably controlling the other side and that they're on the right slide. But for the background, we'll make sure it's on the right slide as well. And at the top, it says establishing maintenance services. So let's begin to talk about this. So there's about 6 different things that you want to do to establish maintenance services. The first thing is that you want to design and price your maintenance services, right? By design, we mean what are the elements in your maintenance service? Are you going to Ryland test the exterior of foundation walls and the surface outside of a brick and mortar home every 500 square feet or every 250 square feet for water intrusion into those porous surfaces? Are you going to take moisture content readings in the unconditioned spaces of the home? Are you going to be looking at dew point in terms of what is the air temperature coming out of your registers and things like that? All of those are important considerations of the service itself and how you price that. Then what you're going to want to do is establish a customer agreement. Okay, that can go down a number of paths depending upon if you offer warranty or not. And then you're going to want to establish a CRM or ERP for organizing all your customers and leads into one system where you can market, and there's going to be some other things that come out of that as well. You're going to want to make sure that all your leads and your contacts your contacts and accounts are segmented. You're going to have all existing customers from leads in your CRM or your ERP, and you're going to create simple marketing and reminder campaigns as well that are segmented based upon priority and that prioritize bringing your customer back to your website. And finally, you're going to calendar your new maintenance customers, ensuring that there are dates of notification of service dates, and if warranty is involved, termination dates, right? All of those things have to be taken into consideration. If you want to work with us on that, especially if you're a certified firm and you go, man, that's the next stage that we need to take care of, then make sure that we have a conversation about that. We can point you in the right direction for some starter contracts and things to get you started and help you set that up. Now, this brings us to one other thing, and that is when we started working with institutions and multifamily builders and municipalities, we found that by law, these folks are supposed to be on a program. Okay, now that means, and examine this yourself, it means you may want to be on a program too. What does a program entail? Well, a program should meet the regulations and standards of EPA, OSHA, and ICRC, right? Those are if you want to call it, the 3 governing bodies of probably our day-to-day. That's where we're at. And by doing so, that will allow you then to establish both institutional and municipal sales. That's kind of the number one key. The second thing about a program is that you would be establishing accountability between yourself and your client. How often is it easy to get off the same page with your customer, right? Where they thought you said something, you didn't say something, it wasn't documented. A good program should have documentation from the time of completion all the way through post-remediation verification.
Yeah.
Right?
There's nothing worse as a production manager getting out there and fighting the he said, she said part of it. And a great estimator, a great sales guy will always capture every note that they can. Every expectation should be written down, and it should be logged in something or somewhere, right? Correct?
Yeah.
So that when you go out there with a project manager and your crew and the customer's all there, you're getting ready to start this project. Well, you don't have, well, I thought he said we were going to do this.
Mhm.
That's not written down. That product. That's not something that we captured in the estimate, but the customer's always right. So it's hard.
And in our business, a lot of times, especially when it comes to commercial work, institutional work, and municipal work, you end up getting kicked off a job.
That's right.
Just by lack of information, lack of accountability. And sometimes that accountability should have fallen on the customer side of things.
Yeah, and we're talking about counts that could be anywhere from 10 to multiple hundreds of thousands.
That's exactly right.
I mean, that's exactly right. It's huge to have,
your project manager on the same page as.
Right. So that's another thing that a good program should include. It should provide automations and notifications amongst all parties for clarity.
That's right.
Every step along the way, there should be specific notifications electronically so that there's a history of that. So if it comes up, you can point directly to it. It's why we have agreements in the first place.
That's exactly right.
Then a good program should include all steps of the process from inspection through post-remediation verification for complete transparency. Transparency, there's nothing better to education and following through a process than transparency.
That's right. I've always been a big firm fan of integrity when you are sitting there talking to a customer. Try not to blow it out. Try not to undersell, oversell. I want to be spot on. I heard a lot of people say, well, if you undersell and over promise or over deliver, you're doing good, but over promise and under deliver. But I think there's a happy medium and a ditch there on both sides of the road. Capture their expectations, ask the right questions, ask the qualified questions that you need so that you can write it down, that we're all transparent. This is how the system works. This is how the process works. Here's what goes next. Here's what's going to happen after that. And everybody's on the same page.
Yep.
And everything's being documented and then being passed down from roll to roll.
Yeah. So another part of a good program is that it keeps you on a property between large services with inspections, repairs, all of these services that go into building value and a long-term relationship with that client are paid services in between the big ones, right?
That's right.
And speaking of big, by having all of these things worked out in advance, by being on a program like this, it brings you institutional and commercial customers that really tend to start at about $15,000 and say, and go up from there.
Absolutely.
Yep. I haven't been on many jobs in institutions or commercially yet that tend to fall below that.
Yeah, I mean, either I've done government work for the past. I've done courthouses. I've done a lot of hotels and a lot of property management companies. And when I see those leads come in or that customer come in, I know there's an opportunity for a large scale job. And one thing that I've always learned as well, and Mark will vouch for this, you're not trying to get everything up front. Take your time with the project.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead and get your feet in there. Work with each other. You may not want to sign that big contract right away because you're a little gun shy on how they act or how they work, whether or not what their processes are. It's good to start at a smaller scale and work your way up, and you use your better instinct for that.
The natural tendency on jobs like this also is to rush.
Yeah.
Right. And the number one reason people get kicked off of jobs is they just start working right away.
Yeah, that's right.
Before they've ever established all the baseline issues.
Right.
So, for example, did you know that if you're working with an institution, let's just say like we're working with UNCC right now down in Charlotte, North Carolina, that each person involved on their side of things also has to have assigned titles, and because they have specific responsibilities to the third-party contractor within that relationship, and there's specific communications that need to happen. And if they don't, they're actually they're operating against EPA, which is the regulator of that relationship in the first place.
And I've always coached it like this. We're going to look at UNCC. It's good for them to get to know my staff. It's good for them to get to know my guys, whether that's a lunch on the project. Bring their guys in. Let's bring my guys in. Let's do 30.
Be careful with those lunches, by the way. You can't give away lunches, right? It's I learned that the hard
way. But have some kind of fellowship with each other prior to getting started. It's especially on the larger side. It's good to know, the Susans and the Bens and the bills.
But it's got to be documented. And my point here is everything must be documented, and you have to understand regulation and how it applies to those relationships and the specific naming of individuals, titles given to individuals, and the way that they interact back and forth. If you're not on a program that doesn't do that, it's not the right program. And that's how we're educating the institutions right now as well. The other thing that a program will do is it'll act to retain and it'll assist in upsells, right? As we're moving along in a program, there's education tied to the documentation side of things, and there's recurring education that has to take place so that as they're our new employees and things, that's being taken into consideration. It has to be a full-fledged program of education and then a documentation cycle that stands the test of law.
That's correct. That's correct. Anytime that you're ever going to be, someone wants to come in and take a look at something, you've got to have that documentation, that insurance company, that, whatever it may be.
That risk manager,
The risk
risk manager. Yep,
What if OSHA shows up? What is your documentation?
that's right.
When you get in the lead abatement, when you get into all these different kinds of abatements, you've got to have that documentation. And it's the same way once you get into the commercial field, especially with universities and, and prisons and hospitals and things like that. They have to have it documented and a paper trail on it in order to show a lot of different things at the end of the year, to where they're having to go through their workman's comp or,
Mhm.
or what it's like to be, audited at
Mhm.
the end of the day. And it's no fun if you don't have that paper trail there.
And those audits can come from within, they can come from without. The other and the final thing that I'll mention, it takes us back to my example of the lunch that I had yesterday, and that is we've got to prevent these callbacks, right? There's no reason to be spending $750,000 a year in just callback situations. So by doing all of these things, by being on the right program, we are preventing that. Really, that's net margin at the end of the day that we're losing if we're getting callbacks, right? So being on the right program prevents against that. So that takes us to what maybe a lot of folks out there who are seeing this now should understand. We have launched a sister company called eCare, and eCare is all about, it doesn't matter if it's residential work, commercial work, or especially institutional municipal work. eCare is the ticket to having everything from the very beginning of the complaint, right? Where that complaint is put in by, let's say, the institution itself.
Yep.
That information flows directly over. In fact, we've got a little thing over here. That information flows directly. It's not important that you move it for that. That information flows directly over to you.
Yep.
Sometimes, if it's less than $50,000, there's not going to be a bid process, depending upon the state. If it's more than $50,000, I can assure you there's going to be a bid process. But the way that all of that flows through is the central element to the success of it, and retaining that job throughout the tenure and continuing to be that preferred contractor is, quite frankly, documentation.
Yeah, it's all paper trail at the end of the day. You've got to have the yeses and nos and the signatures and all the right
And the
places.
readings and the inspections
Absolutely. Very detailed.
and the
report.
notifications, right? Making sure that those notifications go to risk management along the way is super important, but for staying on the same page with everybody.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, you're only going to create a repeat cycle of clients and customers once you do this, because if you're doing it correctly, you may say, well, I don't want such a big job. Well, not a lot of people like making a lot of money. So
Right.
it is what it is. But
Right.
I think if you're going to take on these large scale jobs, to separate yourself from the competition and what everybody else is out doing, make yourself just a little bit different.
Right.
Understand what we're doing right here, what Mark is creating. It is absolutely a buttoned up process from A to Z, and you will not leave anything out if you follow it from A to Z.
And you won't miss those upsells either.
And you won't miss the upsells.
Yeah.